Chapter 2. Ellen followed Bill to the bow. Ocean spray flitted across her sunglasses, and she pulled down her sun hat to further shade her face. While the rear of the boat stank of diesel and oil, the bow smelled of fresh ocean air. Definitely the preferred scent. Bill sat on the couch facing the bow, and she sat next to him. When he held out his hand, she took it in hers and squeezed gently. "I think I see it," Bill said, pointing to the horizon. At first, she saw nothing, even while following his finger, but then the speck of green jumped out against the field of blue and gray. Ellen sighed gratefully and glanced at Bill. "Means we'll be off this thing soon." Bill nodded. "Good. I've been feeling nauseous for the past 15 minutes. She put her arm around him. "You're sure that just wasn't a delayed reaction to meeting Philip?" He snickered and kissed her cheek. That scotch didn't exactly help things. "Be glad it was only one," she said. "Otherwise you'd be hurling over the side." "Probably." They fell silent as the island loomed larger. It appeared covered in flora, although it was difficult to make out many details from this far away. "Palm trees, green fawns. Maybe we can make love beneath the canopy," she thought, a grin spreading across her face. "What are you thinking about?" She leaned close to him. "How good being alone on a tropical island would be right now." "Alone? You want to be alone?" "No, dummy. I meant the two of us." "Oh. I'll second that." They were quiet as the yacht closed the distance to the island. She could make out more details now. From this distance, the island's northern end appeared to consist of a bluff and a sandy shore. Palm trees and other greenery jutted upward from the craggy rocks. As they drew within a quarter-mile of the island, Bill shook his head in disbelief. "How the hell are we supposed to swim there?" Bill asked. She wondered the same thing. It was impossible to know for certain, but it didn't appear there was a dock or any other way down to the water. Sure, you could probably climb down, but how the hell would you get back up? Green Island was no larger than maybe a few square miles, but she'd still expected more from a multi-billionaire's private estate. An old-timey elevator, perhaps. She laughed, and Bill glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "Nothing. It doesn't look like much, does it?" "Not really." Persephone turned to the southwest, and a wave crashed into the bow. A spray of droplets rose over the gunwale in a delicate rain. Ellen yipped in surprise, and Bill laughed while she wiped her sunglasses clean, and watched in fascination as the yacht continued heading south-southwest and drew closer to the landmass. The island's topology began to change. While the island's north side was rocky, the west side had a large, half-moon lagoon split from the ocean by a dark green reef. A white sandy beach broke out of the trees, and she could make out a few sun chairs and umbrellas on the beach, and, if she wasn't mistaken, what looked like a bar. "That's more like it," Bill said, smiling. The smile looked genuine for once. For the last 3 months, she watched helplessly as he ground himself into nothing. Irritable, sleepless, and hardly interested in affection of any kind, Bill had damn near broken their marriage. He might not realize that, she thought. At least he didn't find divorce lawyer listings in my browser history. Ellen wrote software too, but was in a completely different class than Bill. While he worked on the nuts and bolts of enterprise-wide infrastructure, she designed user interfaces and interacted with customers. She pulled her share of all-nighters, but those had been early in her career, and before she refused to work them. Bill, on the other hand, salivated at the idea of a problem with no solution. He would crush every possibility until he found one that worked. It might be a gift, but it also meant he could be blind to everything else going on around him. Like his wife walking in naked while he was coding. Did he notice? Yes. What had he said? "Are you going to bed?" Instead of leaning against the open doorway and shouting at him or shrieking at him, she merely nodded and walked into the bedroom to cry. He hadn't even come to bed that night. They'd been married 5 years, were both just over 30, and were childless. Neither had student loans, and apart from the mortgage, they had no debts to speak of. All that was good, but it didn't replace having someone in your life. It didn't replace having someone touch you or show their love for you. All it had done was make her resent what they built together because, in the end, it meant nothing to their relationship. This was the last chance. She'd been on the verge of telling him she was leaving him when he came home with the news that the project had been a success, he was being promoted, and that Green himself had invited him to his private island. She demurred at first, but then he transferred back into the man she'd fallen in love with. He'd unzipped his backpack, brought out $100 bottle of wine, produced a box of chocolates, and finally gave her the kiss she'd been missing for so long. They made love in the kitchen in front of the refrigerator, their clothes half off and shoes kicked into a pile. After that, they'd decided the bedroom was the place to be. All of that happened a mere week ago, and now here she was, looking at what appeared to be paradise with her smiling, happy man and best friend. She squeezed his hand again and glanced at him with excitement. If there weren't people on the boat, she'd have pulled off his pants right then and there. "Still no pier," Bill said, his eyes returning to the island. The yacht continued onwards until they reached the island's southern end. The beach rose slightly before ending in a line of palm trees that created a thick canopy. Two paths broke through the trees and spiraled upward to a large house at the top of a rolling hill. She glimpsed a rather spacious hut a few hundred feet from the house before she lost it to the trees. The boat decelerated with a growl of the engines, but didn't head inland. Confused, she looked at Bill. "We're anchoring out here?" "I guess so." He pointed at a thick line of green in the water. "A few reefs out there, and I bet the water gets shallow fast. Probably can't bring the boat in." She suddenly realized what that meant. "Oh, baby, you going to be okay riding in a fancy dinghy?" "Huh?" "I forgot what a landlubber you are." She pointed aft. "That big Zode at the back? We're taking that to the pier." "Oh," Bill said, suddenly looking a little green. A wave buffeted the boat, and for a moment she thought he'd puke all over the bow. Instead, he swallowed hard and managed to smile. "I'll be okay. Looks like it's a relatively short trip." "Thankfully," she said, kissing him on the cheek. The boat came to a relative stop in the water, and Brandon appeared behind them. "Hi," he called, the sun reflecting off his expensive-looking shades. "You might want to head aft with the other guests. We're dropping the anchor in a second." Ellen slowly rose from the bench, and Bill followed suit, one hand still in hers. Brandon tipped his cap and disappeared down the gunnel. "Ready?" "To see Philip? Fuck no." She giggled. "Once we get to shore, you can relax." He pointed at the island and the house on the hill as they walked to the gunnel. "That looks like a hike." Ellen rolled her eyes. "You have to be kidding me. You think Green is going to force his pasty-faced, zen-chewing, vape-fiending, alcoholic, cokeaholic, meth addict fellow billionaires to walk uphill, let alone business prospects?" She shook her head. "No way in hell." They continued down the gunnel, suddenly grateful for the flybridge's shade. As they neared the break to the stern, she heard Philip's drunken voice complaining about his nap. Bill looked back at her with disgust, and she nearly laughed. Philip sat on the comfortable cushioned couch facing the large table. Bleary-eyed and flushed, he looked like he barely knew where he was. Janet stood next to him and gave them an apologetic smile. "Hi, guys," Philip slurred. "How was the trip in?" She wanted to turn around and tell him he was a drunk. She also wanted to tell him how fucking boring of a human being he was. More than that, she wanted to ask Janet her age and why she didn't have better sense. Instead, she simply said, "It was great. Should have been there." The moment she finished saying the sentence, she felt nauseous. "Doing this for Bill and me," she thought. The sensation passed quickly, but she wanted off the boat more than ever. Russ and Autumn stood near the stairs leading to the dive deck and the sizable rigid inflatable boat floating behind the yacht. Russ seemed less drunk, although it was difficult to tell. At least he wasn't sitting to keep from falling down. "Hello," Russ and Autumn said near simultaneously. They looked at one another and started laughing. Ellen couldn't help smiling, thoughts of Philip suddenly vanishing from her mind. Bill shook his head and grinned. "Does that happen often?" Autumn snickered. "More often than you think." Russ pulled her close. "I think she's telepathic." "No, you are," Autumn said defensively. "Anyway, how are you two? Heard you were at the bow." Brandon walked out of the main cabin as the anchors dropped into the water. "Okay, guests," he said, clapping his hands. "We're going to climb down to the dive deck and take a seat anywhere, but not in the cockpit." Russ and Autumn immediately went down the steps to the much smaller boat. "Shall we?" Bill took a deep breath and sighed. "We shall." Once they reached the pier, a squat, swarthy man with muscles rippling beneath his tight, white button-up stood next to two other similarly dressed people. Each carried a sign. Bill saw his last name and waved at the man. Grinning, he beckoned them. When they got closer, the man said, "Hi, I'm Nicholas. I'll be your valet for your stay." Bill exchanged a glance with Ellen. "Valet?" Nicholas beamed. "Yes, I'll take care of your needs while you're on the island." He gestured to a line of large golf carts on the shore. "Instead of making you wait for your luggage, would you like to go to your bungalow?" Bill opened his mouth to say he'd rather wait, but Ellen cut him off. "Yes, please." Nicholas's smile remained, but the man looked curious. "Follow me, please." He walked down the long pier, Bill and Ellen a few feet behind. When he reached the middle golf cart, he pointed at spacious back seats. Bill was glad the golf cart had a roof. The noonday sun was blinding and hot. The moment he took a seat in the shade, though, only the humidity remained. Nicholas put the vehicle into gear and expertly reversed away from the pier before making a slow 180-degree turn. He aimed the vehicle at the western path and smoothly accelerated. "Welcome to Green Island," Nicholas said, his accent easy to understand. "Is this your first time to one of Mr. Green's islands?" "Yes." "Excellent." The cart slowly climbed the relatively steep incline, and for a moment Bill felt like he was on a roller coaster. "Some refreshments are waiting for you in your bungalow," Nicholas said. "You're welcome to take a nap, explore the island, visit the main house, or even swim." "Swim," Ellen said. "That sounds perfect." "After we get something to eat," Bill said. The nausea from the boat ride had worn off, as well as the feeling of constantly rocking from one side to the other. Now his stomach was hungry, and he wanted to drink water. A lot of it. "Of course, sir," Nicholas said. "Oh, call me Bill, and this is Ellen." "Bill and Ellen," Nicholas echoed. "Your bungalow is already prepared for you. I made sure of it myself." "Thank you," Ellen said. "My pleasure." Nicholas wound them through the trees, the brilliant green ferns lining the road gently swaying from their passage. He turned to the east, traveled up a short incline, and finally met another road. After another 300 feet, the bungalow she'd seen from the yacht came into view. The thatched facade around the 600-square-foot building was almost convincing. Bill fought back a snicker. Green had gone to the trouble of trying to make this place look native, but Bill could see water lines running into the bungalow, as well as a solar generator out back. If he hadn't thought Green insane before, he did now. This was conspicuous consumption at its finest. A billionaire's island kitted out like a resort rather than a private plaything. He cleared his throat. "Is there a way to communicate with the outside world? We had to surrender our cell phones before getting on the boat." Nicholas shook his head jovially. "Not unless there's an emergency. This is an island for lovers. Mr. Green prohibits his guests from having cell phones. It also protects our guests from taking unflattering photos and videos." Bill wasn't sure what to make of that statement. Nicholas stopped the cart and stepped out. He walked to Ellen and offered his hand. "May I, Ellen?" She blushed and allowed him to help her out of the cart. Bill felt a ridiculous flare of jealousy at the gesture. In truth, he was the one that should have gotten out. "If you'll follow me, please," Nicholas said, and walked down the short path leading to the bungalow. He touched a wristband to the door, and it opened silently. "Come on in," he said, holding open the door. Bill gestured for her to go first. "Why, thank you, sir," she said in the Blanche Dubois accent she was so proud of. Bill rolled his eyes and followed her to the doorway. The bungalow lights flipped on when she crossed the threshold, although they were quite dim. He grinned, knowing the lights would soon be much brighter. Green was notorious for loathing the transition between light and dark. All of Green Industries' offices had this feature. When the lights came on, they gradually brightened rather than hit you all at once. "Fancy," Bill agreed. The walls were tastefully decorated, the furniture sparse but opulent, and the bed had built-in storage compartments. Bill spied a half fridge in the corner next to the bed, and his mouth suddenly felt drier than ever. Nicholas entered the bungalow, closed the door behind him, and immediately headed to the fridge as if he read Bill's mind. He pulled out 2 thick glass bottles and offered them. Bill took his gratefully, fiddled with the stopper, and pulled the cork. The water tasted better than any bottled brand he'd ever had. When he finished taking a long pull, he wiped his mouth and felt sheepish to find both Nicholas and his wife staring at him. "Sorry, was thirsty." "I'm sorry we did not have refreshments ready at the pier. That was an oversight that will be corrected," Nicholas said gravely. "No, it wasn't a problem. He fumbled for words. I nearly got sick on the boat, and, well, Nicholas held up a hand. No need to explain, Bill. We've all been there. He gestured to the bed. The thermostat controls are on the sides of the headboard. Those will adjust the room as well as the bed temperature. Bill cocked an eyebrow. The bed is heated? No, it is chilled. If it ever gets too hot in the bungalow, or you wish to have a different kind of experience, you can set the bed as low as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow, Ellen said. She walked to it and pressed against the mattress. Firm but pliable. Yes, a Green Industries prototype. Nicholas leaned in conspiratorially. Mine is smaller, but is the most comfortable bed I've ever slept on. Good to know, Bill said. Nicholas walked to the east wall and pressed gently. A recessed panel opened up, revealing 3 lidded trays. He opened the first, and the smell of something grilled lit Bill's nostrils. We have seared mahi for sandwiches, roasted potatoes, and fresh coconut. If there is something else you require, please let me know. Smells delicious. Bill's mouth was already watering. But before you eat, I need you to do one thing for me. What's that? Nicholas reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 wristbands. If I may? He asked Ellen and gestured to her left arm. She nodded and offered it to him. He expertly wrapped the band around her wrist and pulled the loop. This is your keycard for all the island amenities, including the main house. Nicholas quickly did the same for Bill. Once finished, he stepped toward the door and pointed to a panel on the wall. There is an intercom there to call me should you require anything. If you are unsure of what's available, the green smart display is recessed in the west wall. Do you have any questions I might answer? Bill shook his head no, but Ellen said, Yeah, do you have snorkels, flippers, and masks? We do, Nicholas said. When you are ready to go snorkeling, I'll lead you to the beach myself, get you kitted out, and help you enjoy the water. Bill wasn't sure what that meant, but it sounded as though the man would serve them while they were snorkeling. That sounds great, Bill said. But first, lunch. Yes, there are more refreshments in the refrigerator and many health-related items stowed beneath the bed. If there is nothing else? Ellen shook her head this time. Excellent. Bon appetit, he said and walked to the door. Remember, call me for anything. We will, Ellen said, waving to him. The moment he left, Ellen put her hands around Bill's neck. I want you, right now. He blinked before kissing her and putting his hands around her waist. Now? He kissed her neck. Now. It took Bill a maddening minute to find the light switch.